the World Dance Day. This is being organized by Sahapedia, Milap, and the Pune Cultural Mapping Project. For this session, we have the renowned Kathak dancer and choreographer Ms. Aditi Mangaldas, and she would be sharing her creative process with us for the next 30 minutes. And we hope to gather a lot of knowledge from you, ma'am. Over to you.
Yeah, hello and wonderful to be here. Thank you so much, Sahapedia, Milap, and all the other organizers. Thank you, Priya, for moderating and helping me through this. When we talk about the creative process, I'm going to talk about something that held true to me as an artist 4 weeks ago. Because that is when it felt honest. Today, under these circumstances, things have changed. So I don't know currently how that process would work now or work into the new normal that we are all, as a humanity, the entire humanity is going to walk into. And yet I feel something, hopefully, of those years, I say, because actually it was only 4 weeks ago, but that time will resonate with us today. I'd like to begin talking about a work of mine called Immersed. It's one of my most favorite pieces. And it's about Krishna, looking at Krishna as life itself. The attributes of Krishna are immeasurable. I mean, he's attributed to do all kinds of things. And the persona of Krishna has inspired music, dance, literature, architecture, poetry, literature, through generations, for centuries. So what is this persona of Krishna? How can I enter? I remember growing up in a household with my paternal grandmother, and there was a little mandir in our house. I would hear the aarti. I would hear Mukhyaji praying to the deity, which was Radha and Krishna. I would feel the fragrance and hear, talk about my grandmother talking about the bhog, which is the prasad. And so one grew up in that atmosphere. Many of us have grown up by the many, many narratives of Krishna. And yet, I'm not a Hindu. I'm not a Muslim or a Christian, or I don't find my spirituality within any organized religion. So how do I enter this world of Krishna? And I felt that after reading much, after many discussions with Shubha Mudgal and Anish Pradhan, who've done the music for this piece, and they gave me many, many works to go through, I thought the only thing that rings true to me is to look at Krishna as life itself. Because how can one man, one woman, the god or the goddess, be all this and more? And I say, if you're God, if you're life, then you must be breath, and therefore always be at the edge of my being. So the work expands from the attributes of Krishna, taken from the 108 names of Krishna, into this piece by the poet Bhartendu Harishchandra, Savare Chhailare Nain ki Ot na jana, which in a way is saying, life, you are breath, you are life, always be at the edge of my being. I request Priya to show you the first clip. As you know, these are just little instances of the work. Thank you.
da
It's, of course, the content is the most important. So through my work, please, the content takes years in the sense that the concept is within you, within me, for months and months at a time. I sometimes read different things, talk to people about it, listen to music, be inspired by things that may not be directly connected to the work. And then it sort of finds a gestation period within your mind, your heart, your body. And it's much later that I go on to the studio and also start my collaborative process, like I started with Shubha and with the light designer Fabiana Piccioli for this work. So it gets layered one upon another, and these layers simultaneously create the work. I think to have layers, it's very important for me not to hold the audience by the hand and say, okay, this is what I have thought, this is what I want you to follow. But have a comma behind that sentence so they follow with their own life experiences and their own understanding of life itself. Now, this work, for the first 45 or 50 minutes, I had gone through the entire repertoire of the classical Kathak format. In the sense, all the gems that we talk about. And then I thought it's interesting to show a concept slightly differently. Shubha had given me this piece by Chita Swami, Aage Krishna, Pache Krishna, Ita Krishna, Uta Krishna, Jit Dekho Tita Krishna. How do you show that? Of course, through movement, of course, through music. But how do you build that environment? And we worked on it with using a backdrop that is white and actually glass wool and just 3 lights and having this sense of Krishna surrounding you, eventually getting immersed in blue, which clip I don't have right now, but Priya, please show the second clip of Immersed. Thanks.
Aage Krishna, Pache Krishna, It Krishna, Ut Krishna, Jit Dekho Tit Krishna Mai, Jit Dekho Tit Krishna Mai, Jit Dekho Tit Krishna Mai.
I'm sorry, I think there is some technical problem, and so the clips are getting interrupted. Um, well, it's reflecting how we are right now in a way, because we are all in a sense of this major interruption. But I will come to that work later, called inter_rupted, in fact. I would like to talk about how this process starts. With me, it's an autobiographical thing to begin with. And then hopefully the trajectory takes on a more universal feel. And therefore it moves away from the narrow confines of my own thoughts, of my own life. I want to talk about a work called Within. We were working on looking at relationships. And for that, we read a lot from mythology, from Hindu mythology. And then the horrific Nirbhaya case happened. Now here we were looking at the relationship between Shiva and Parvati. And suddenly, this incredible brutal act happened. And as an artist, as somebody who was in a creative process at that point, it was impossible not to be affected from it. I do feel that we have to be, as artists, we have to be living today We have to be breathing the air of today. And therefore, this impact was something from which the trajectory of within went in a very different way. We started looking at brutality and humanity. We, as when we are born, there's nobody born with brutality. So, what is it in the environment? What is it that makes someone open out these immensely brutal things within yourself? And therefore, the piece is in two parts, knotted and unwrapped. Knotted is what I have, as you may know or you may not, that I have two streams. One is my classical exploration, classical Kathak, and one is what I call contemporary dance based on Kathak. So the first piece, Knotted, is a contemporary exploration of this tormented self going into the second half. I would request Priya to show you this. It's about the torment of the body. It's about the complete breaking away of where the truth lies within us, when we just are not able to see what is within us, and brutality takes over. I'm really sorry about this. This actually clip ends with a feather that falls very gently. And that feather, the lightness of the feather, and yet the brutal repercussions that happen afterwards, was where the connection happened. I'm a very positive person, and therefore I didn't want to leave this piece in a dark place. So till the interval, it's dark. I wanted the audience to be disturbed because there is no saving point about brutality. And I wanted these questions to arise in them. Are we ready to look within? So the second half, Unwrapped, starts with, which is classical Kathak, starts with all the dancers with faces wrapped. In a way, it was our attempt, my way of saying, are we ready to look within? And here I would like to quote from a quotation by the philosopher J. Krishnamurti. To understand yourself, you must create a mirror that reflects accurately what you are. Only in understanding of what is there freedom from what is. And therefore, it is only when you are ready to look and find the mirror that truly represents who you are. Can that brutality dissolve? And I found I found inspiration in the Siddha image of the Jain tradition. It's actually a cutout, it's a negative cutout. So the sculpture is actually a cutout, it's empty space. So it depends on you of what you put that against. What is it that you see? Are you looking through that to the sky, or are you looking at it at a closed, maybe a locked door? And therefore, this within then expands into light from darkness using Kabir's poetry. I would like to go to the second clip, and if it doesn't work, then we just have a chat a little later. Yeah, when we talk about the creative input, it can start from anywhere. It can be the laughter of a child that you hear. It can be a leaf falling. It can be a piece of poetry. It can be a concept. It can be text. It can be music. But eventually, I do feel that when I refer to poetry, when I refer to any piece of text, I need to make it my own. So you understand what the poet or what the author felt, at least read texts about it. And yet it needs to resonate with you. You need to transform it into movement. So you can't really take a great piece of poetry and translate it into a great piece of art. I think it needs to be transformed into the movement of the body, the heart, and the mind. And this layering is the most important of finding that transformation, which within the total aspect of dance, the nritya and the natya, the heart, the mind, and the body. And then everything else comes in. One of the works that I did recently was called Widening Circles, and it is based on the concept of Pratitya Sanmutpad. This is because that is, and the interconnection of the entire world. Interconnection of a small thing here that changes and makes a major change somewhere else. So we used text from the Upanishads, we used a bandish from Ahmad Nadeem Qasimi, we used Mirabai, and we also used a poem that stitched the entire piece together from Rainer Maria Rilke. And yet, where was this connection? So first, there was this connection of the text, and also from Tagore. Also, there was the connection, the metaphor in the entire piece was a lotus. And how is this lotus connected to the sun, to the earth, and to the moon? In the next short clip that I show you, the lotus in a piece by Mirabai. So there's another connection actually, because the piece by Mirabai is Main Birahani Baithi Janu. She's waiting for her beloved. And at the same time, looking at she's waiting for her beloved as the whole world sleeps at night, and at the same time is observing the shut lotus, who is waiting in turn for the lotus's beloved, which is the sun, because the lotus is appealing to the moon that please open, please set, because I'm too young to shut right now. And I want to blossom and I want to welcome the sun. But you have risen, the sun has set, and therefore I appeal to you that please set. So there were multiple layers of entry. Of course, it's impossible to show this through a small clip, but please notice there is a watermark in the clip, which is the watermark, which is the Abhinay part, and then on top there is another dance sequence. Widening circles, please. Thank you. Hi. At times we get lulled into this fact that life is a continuous wave. Yes, there are ups and downs. And yet, when interruptions happen, it's a shock. There was something like that happened to me a couple of years ago. And I started thinking about a work that I would like to make that would emerge from the body itself, that would talk about the fragility of the body, and yet are thinking that it is invincible, that would look at the body, about the disintegration of the body, about how the skin disintegrates, the muscle disintegrate, the bones disintegrate, and eventually our emotions disintegrate. And yet the resilience of the body, that till there is the last breath, that inevitable last breath, we pursue on. So this was a work called Interrupted. And unlike my other works, which started off, as I told you, a whole process in which my going on to this dance studio happened much later. And after much collection and much reading and much listening to music, what I did with Interrupted, and I was supported by Farooq Chaudhary, who was the dramaturge, and Murad Deyes, who was our mentor. And Farooq said, this, of course, this concept had been in my head for a long time. But he said, just go onto the stage or onto the studio and create something. Just create something out of nothing, but out of the years of your life, years of your training, years of immersion in Kathak. And so these pieces emerged out of right there being there. I would like to show you this work and then we go on to any questions, if there are any, and I request Priya then to moderate. So, a short clip. It's not short, actually, it's 2 minutes of interrupted. Hi. So, yes, the clip got interrupted before it finished, but that's good. It reflects the work, it reflects our times, and we need to actually think about the whole process of this creative process. For me, it has suddenly transformed in a drastic way, as I feel that must have for many artists here, many artists the world over. Because this kind of interruption that we are facing right now is something at least most of us, except probably in war-torn places or the Second World War, or maybe when there is some major catastrophe, natural catastrophe, we haven't faced. So, how this creative process will inform me right now, this talk was not about that. I put it out, I have about 5 minutes, I think. And yes, and I see a question here which says that what is the most challenging aspect of converting a piece of literature that you might be inspired from? Yes, yeah. Well, I would say that there are artists who are true to what, when they take a piece of literature or poetry, they want to be truthful to whatever their understanding is of what the poet uh, was had in her or his mind, or in that poetry or in that exploration of that text. For me, it is understand. I want to understand that. I want to read more literature and poetry of that particular poet or author, more things relating to that very subject from other authors and poets. But for me, it's very important, and the most challenging for me is how does that concept become truthful for me? How do I find my entry point into it? And eventually, how is it that I don't just interpret it? how do I transform it? As I mentioned right in the beginning, how is this piece, a word, a sentence, a poem transformed into dance? So that it is a stand-alone work with the poem or the text as an added layer. So how is this body going to move with my mind and my heart and my body to that concept which is truthful to me? That is the biggest challenge. You are muted. You are muted.
I was just saying, if you'd like to take the next question by Smita, I think she's talking to.
Yes, as I said, and we have very little time. I was talking about our inability to see, as I quoted J. Krishnamurti, to find the right mirror to reflect who we really are. And so, because Within was about brutality and humanity, this was a metaphor of us not being actually able to look within ourselves. That we are not able to find that true mirror who will reflect who we truly are. And in the understanding of who we truly are, we may be able to find that embrace of brutality and humanity. And therefore, we may be able to see the reality. You know, we are always pointing fingers. That one is violent, that one is violent. But are we looking at the growth of violence between each of us? How we talk to people around us? How do we get angry and upset and arrogant with our own children, our own relationships, our own parents? Little bit of violence that begins within us. That was the whole well, meaning behind that.
Maybe we can take one last question. Shruti would like to know, when does light and stage design enter your process of conceptualizing a dance performance?
Yeah, well, you know, originally, as I said, the thought remains in my head for very long. And I talk to people, I talk to my family, I talk to my dancers who I see many of them here, Gauri, Rashmi, hi, Sanjay, hi. And it's just collaborating, discussing, just gathering. I have this little Ziploc bag in which I fill my thoughts. They are written on restaurant napkins, they are written on little bits of paper found here, magazine ends, flight coupons, all kinds of things. And then the process of thinking about what is it, what am I lighting, what is the main concept that I'm lighting. And then you start discussing with the music composer, and like Shubha Mudgal, and like Ish Shehrawat, who has done my music, and so many others, and then the light designer. May it be Govind, may it be Milind Srivastava, may it be Gyandev, may it be Fabiana Picholi. What is it in my mind? I don't tell them, okay, I'm going to be here, so put a light here. No, I talk to them about the concept. That's very important. I don't even know where I'm going to be. So basically, ideally, it would be nice to start bringing them into a conversation. If that allows, if it's not, even at a later stage, start the conversation about the concept. So they start. It's not about Aditi being here or Gauri being on this spot or so and so being here. No, it's about how are we going to light the concept? Does the concept reveal the light to them? Fabiana said that very often, that the concept reveals the light at times, and if it doesn't, then our intention of that may be something we need to think about or discuss. So that is when light, stage, and similarly stage, I'm sorry, we don't have the time, but similarly, it's many discussions, many things. We make little, I used to make with Manish Kansara, who's run the stage for Within and Interrupted. many little models at home using a handkerchief and a torch and stuff like that. For widening circles, it was very simple. It was one little diya. So my discussion with Govind was just about one diya. How are we going to use this creatively? You don't have to have 1,000 lights. You can have one light bulb. And I think that's very important right now. Today, what I'm trying to do with my dance company is say that you have one light bulb over your head. Okay? You have access to some kind of music, some kind of poetry, some kind of light coming through your window, some kind of space in between chairs and in between tables, and maybe on your bed if there is no space. Find the creativity within the reality of where you are right now. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Ms. Aditi. It
Thank
was
you.
just wonderful to have you here and to see so many performances, and for us to have been audience to your creative process. And I would just like to share with everyone that we are continuing these sessions on our Facebook page as well as on Milap's Facebook page throughout the World Dance Day, which is today. Thank you so much, Ms. Aditi, again.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye bye.
Bye. Bye. Bye.